We've discussed the full story of Toya Todoroki, otherwise known as Dabi, and his final battle against his entire family, involving everything from his fight with Shoto to the final confrontation between the Todorokis on Mount Gunga. But as we work our way to the end of the series with only a few parts left to go, it's now time for the tragic story of Himiko Toga to pick up once again. But to do so, we have to go back a little before the events of Dabi's last flare. In Japan, a young girl is born to a pair of rich parents who've been trying to have a baby for quite some time, as they thank God for the miracle that is their daughter, who everyone dotes on since they think she looks like a beautiful doll. This causes the parents to grow an image of their daughter in their mind of her being perfect, but things take a turn once the girl's quirk activates for the first time. After Toga's quirk appears within her body, her interests and tastes start to change, with her becoming way more interested in blood, and specifically the blood inside of other living creatures. This causes Toga to eventually find a dying sparrow and drink its blood as a way of letting it be close to her and live beyond this moment. However, her parents catch her doing this and think that it's insane that she's able to do all this while having a smile on her face. Instantly, this caused the parents to seek professional help for their daughter, as she was sent to a quirk counseling program for people who either didn't handle their awakening of their quirk very well, or who need a little guidance in fitting into society despite their powers and how it may affect their personality. In these counseling sessions, they constantly try to change the girl and who she was, using some pretty drastic practices, as this was seen as the last hope of saving these quirk users who could all potentially grow up to be villains if they aren't helped. And we know that once someone is a villain in MHA, society abandons them forever and leaves them for the heroes to deal with. Toga goes through the rest of her entire early life pretending to be the daughter that her parents want, pretending to be the girl that her counselor told her that she should be, but it just didn't stick. And eventually we see as Toga snaps as she loses it and ends up injuring a boy at her school who she had a crush on, drinking his blood shamelessly in front of everyone, which was a bridge too far for society to cross, leading to Toga going on the run for years, as she became notorious for being the rich Japanese girl on the run, bringing shame to her family name and being blamed for numerous unsolved murders over the space of just a few years. However, being a young girl alone out in the streets of Japan, it's not clear whether any of these incidents were purely self-defense, but at night, Toga would have trouble sleeping alone under bridges and other secluded areas, as her parents' words echoed in her head, telling her that she was a monster, that she was inhuman and unlovable. And through the tears, eventually Toga would be able to fall asleep until she found a home with the League of Villains and abandoned any thoughts of her family and where she belonged before this. Now, long after this, when the final war of this series began, we saw the heroes start their plan to defeat the villains by luring All For One and his army out and ultimately pushing them through warp gates that break the villain force into smaller groups all across Japan. Now, the plan was for Deku to stay in the UA area with heroes like Bakugo, Mirko, and Best Jeanist, while other students like Todoroki went to their own area to deal with Dabi, and Ochako was finally due to have her final confrontation with Himiko Toga, but instantly right off the bat we're faced with a problem. As Monoma's warp gates open, Gravity and Froppy lead the charge, shoving Himiko through one warp gate and taking with them several of her accompanying villains as well as near high-end Nomus to Okuto Island, which is a resort island 200 kilometers away or 124 miles off of the mainland of Japan. Now, the idea of sending Toga all the way out here to such an isolated area is that they're trying to isolate Himiko somewhere where she can't escape, and to accomplish this they use the Okuto Aquarium, which is actually run by Gang Orca, to pretty much create a watery prison for Toga and the other villains. As the portals close, everything seems like it's going well, but in a flash, Toga uses one of her tubes from her blood-sucking machine as a wire that goes through the portal and wraps around Deku, pulling him in towards Okuto Island, which is miles and miles away, like we just said, from where he's supposed to be fighting Shigaraki. This causes a big issue, and now the area that Deku was in has no real way of holding off Shigaraki all on their own. And we've already told the story of everything that happens there, but soon we'll be back as the story does pick up at UA once again, but that's a story for another time. As Deku stands on the water at Okuto Island and he stares Toga and Ochako down, realizing the danger of this situation, he immediately tries to contact the Eraserhead to try and get teleported back, but their strategy didn't really leave room for error like this, since Monoma is busy using his quirk on Shigaraki and can't open another portal at the risk that the villains will use it to ruin their plan further. So Deku watches as the high-end Nomus in the water start going crazy and attacking various heroes as the aquarium battle begins, but he isn't supposed to be there and realizes that he can't get stuck here for too long. In that moment, Toga pops out of a bubble of water created by the waves and tries to get close to Deku, which surprises the boy since his danger sense isn't pinging off of her despite the fact that she's clearly trying to stab him. But maybe it's the fact that she's saying that she loves him while she smiles that's interfering with his quirk. While he dodges Toga Toga, she tells him that she wants him to be her boyfriend, as nearby we see Ochako freaking out a bit watching Deku freak out to this question. But Toga explains her feelings and how they started after seeing Deku all injured during the first time they met, and Deku tells Toga that being a couple means doing cute stuff like going on dates, but Toga disagrees and says that to her, love is all about being the same as the person she loves. Finally, Toga asks Deku the question that's on her mind, as she says, "Hey, what do you want to do with me?" This is the same question she asked Ochako the last time that they met, as she tried to figure out if any of the heroes even had the thought of saving her on their minds. But Deku responds that even though he understands her feelings, he could never become one with someone who thinks about hurting the people that they love, because that thought is just too alien to Deku. Hearing this outright rejection, Toga thinks about Ochako's answer and hears Curious's voice start whispering in her mind a little, echoing the words that she told Toga during the My Villain Academia arc, where this top-selling author and journalist basically read Toga for what she is, a scared little girl, but still didn't quite understand her, leading to her twisting Toga's perception of herself slowly over time. Now, having been rejected by both Ochako and Deku, the two people that she thought would finally understand her, the only two people she thought could actually love her the way that she needed, and the only two people who Toga felt would ever actually try to save her, Toga abandons the idea of love, or at least the love that everyone else has, and instead gives into her true feelings, completely ripping off the small remaining fragments of the mask she always has on to hide her true self. Now, as Toga attacks Deku and Ochako again, saying that they're just like her parents, Deku's danger sense finally kicks in, as it realizes that this time Toga isn't attacking him out of love. But Ochako gets in the way and grabs Toga, telling her that she's been thinking about her ever since the last time that they fought, and saying that she realizes that the world rejected Toga, but right here, right now, she doesn't intend to do the same. So she wants to hear everything there is in the story of this lost girl, and she's prepared to accept whatever comes of it at the end. But it's already too late. Toga has taken her heart and thrown it in the darkest corner of her body. Even Ochako would have a hard time reaching it at this point. But not giving up, Ochako decides that she'll wade through the darkness and through the waters of Okuto Island as long as it takes to finally reach Toga and show her she understands her, or at the very least wants to. We see as Toga slips away from Ochako and causes a distraction, allowing her to stab Ochako in the back, as she tells Ochako that she's sad about having to do this because since they both like the same boy, she figured that Ochako should have been able to understand her better than anybody, that she would have loved to have been Ochako's friend and shared stories about boys and love together if neither of them had the title of hero or villain. However, seeing Ochako getting injured, Deku activates his black whip and gets serious, tying Toga up as Froppy finally joins the fight as well and starts to help them all out. Ochako tells Deku that he can get out of there and go to Shigaraki because her, Froppy, and the other heroes have this handled, as Deku speeds away towards the original location, not knowing exactly what he'll find when he gets there. But this sets the stage for everything that's about to happen, as all of the girls group up to shut Toga down and finally put a stop to her rampage. Uravity and Froppy smile once Deku is gone, knowing that the plan is starting to fix itself sorta. However, Himiko tells the girl she's had enough and that she's ready to be who she wants to be, while caressing her pouch thinking about Twice, because if you recall, Toga actually has a vial full of Twice's blood, which was retrieved for her by Dabi. This is when, as the waves splash all around her, Toga declares that she has no need for heroes, which makes Ochako respond that if that's the case, it must be okay if she decides to live the way that's right for her. Toga dashes forward using the waves to create gaps that she can hide behind and throw off our girls as she attempts to catch Froppy off guard, but Ochako and some other heroes are able to counter her by detecting her just in time. It's here where Ochako thinks about how Toga uses misdirection to hide her presence using some really complex technique, but there must be a limit to how many people she can evade at once, given she's not literally disappearing, so they'll make sure to constantly keep watch with 4 people and a sensor type hero on her at all times to make sure she doesn't use any of those opportunities to just sneak away from the island and get away. Now, while things are going from every form of bad in the other areas, things are actually going really well in the Okuto Aquarium area, as we see Gang Orca shouting out that the Hayanomu that's left doesn't have any regeneration abilities, so he calls for the most powerful heroes to join him in the battle against the beast, since most of the heroes have actually caught all of the villains that came through the portal with Toga into this area. This throws the girl off as she realizes the more villains they catch, the harder it'll be for her to hide in the middle of this battle, and the less likely of a chance she'll have to escape if things go wrong. So in her mind, she thinks that Twice's blood would allow her to transform for 30 to 40 minutes, and it would fix the problem of not having a crowd to hide in, but right now if she drinks it, she's worried that the Sadman parade that she'll create will all be stuck on this island with her, and part of her goal is making sure that at least some of the Twices escape out into the world so they can live some sort of life. Desperate though, she shouts out that at this rate, it's all over for her, so she has no choice but to act. In a moment before anyone can stop her or even react to what she's doing, she takes out Twice's blood vial from her pouch and says she'll place all of her trust in Spinner, who's battling against Shoji in the city to try and free Kurogiri. If Spinner is able to get to Kurogiri, then she should be able to expect a portal that can take her to another area, which is part of the villain's counter strategy to Yue's plan. Froppy sees the vial in Toga's hand, and in her mind, she actually doesn't realize it's supposed to be Twice's blood and thinks that Toga might be drinking All For One, Tamora, or someone else's blood. So this makes Froppy kick it up a notch because, I mean, any of those people is an instant loss for the heroes there, as she expertly gets to Toga and destroys the vial before she's even able to swallow it. However, Toga reveals that it was actually a decoy that was given to her by All For One, since he figured the heroes would go all out to stop her the first time they saw her taking one of these vials, and she could use that to her advantage to create an opening. This is where we realize that it wasn't even blood inside of the vial that Froppy broke, but it was actually a drug that attracts the Nomu and makes them go wild on the target marked by it. And of course, this causes the high-end that was battling Gang Orca to focus all of its attention on Froppy. The Nomu unleashes a destructive blast, and when the waves settle, Ochako sees Toga, who used the blast as a cover to get some of Froppy's blood and transform into her, holding down the real one as she makes a really creepy face. And in that moment, using a distraction, she swallows the vial containing Twice's blood. Immediately when this happens, everything starts to move really quickly, so let's slow it down so we can make sense of what occurs here. Alright, first off, Toga transforms into Twice and immediately begins creating doubles on either side of herself that form a chain between each other like a group of friends all holding hands. At that moment, Ochako realizes that now more than ever, she's at risk of losing Himiko Toga in the chaos of everything that's happening. But then things get even worse when out of nowhere, right in front of Toga, we see a Kurogiri portal appear, giving her a way out of this battlefield and away from Ochako as Kurogiri emerges from it, saying he has to save Tamora and the others and asking her what she wishes for. Now Toga smiles, and in her mind she's thinking about how Spinner was successful and thinking about how the villains actually have a chance now with Kurogiri being free, as she tells them that she wants to exterminate the heroes, starting with Hawks, ordering Kurogiri to send her there immediately. Ochako tries everything she can to stop Toga from going through, even shouting that they still didn't get to talk about love, while Toga tells her that she wishes they could have, and we see her vanish through the warp gate. But Ochako's not a quitter, and here she makes a very split-second decision and activates her zero gravity on her and Froppy as the two do a maneuver that makes them speed through the air, and they make it just in time to go through Kurogiri's portal as well, following Himiko Toga into the Gunga Mountain battlefield, which at this point is just beginning to devolve into madness, as All For One uses Ares' rewind quirk to revive his prime body, and on top of that, Kurogiri has also opened the portal for Dabi that we know ultimately gets him here as well. Now, we've gone over some of this already. Toga comes out of the portal as Twice and scares the feathers off of Hawks, who says that Toga Twice should be their #1 priority as he tries to deal with All For One, and Endeavor focuses squarely on Dabi. But Toga just begins flooding the battlefield with Twice clones at this point as they start to overwhelm all of the heroes that are there. Ochako lands, saying she's never losing sight of Toga again, but Froppy takes a second to look around and realizes that the situation for the heroes here is really dire, as she sees Kurogiri and Dabi here at the same time, wondering just what happened in Todoroki and Shoji's areas to lead to events like these. As the heroes on the Gunga battlefield start to carry away the villains they've already defeated to keep them from being cremated by Dabi's flames, which are spreading through the Twice doubles all across the battlefield, we see Jiro and Tokoyami regrouping with Ochako and Froppy, giving them a situation report on everything that's happened in their area, and we see Jiro say that she's lucky that all she lost was an ear. Now Ochako looks around and starts breathing heavily, saying if they don't stop Toga here, all of Japan will be buried under her sadness. But that's not really where the danger ends. We see as Toga uses her Twice doubles to start making clones of characters like Shigaraki, Dabi, and All For One, sending a chill down the spines of every hero as they realize that, oh, this is over. Okay, we could just pack it up and leave. We lost. There's multiple All For Ones on the battlefield. GG, folks. Because it really seems like the villains have won now that they have Twice's quirk again. However, something, again, is wrong. Each and every clone of Toga's other than Twice fails to use their quirks, as Toga realizes that in her mind, something is keeping her from truly loving and accepting her fellow villains, which means her ability won't let her use their quirks. Elsewhere, Ochako has a theory saying that the real Twice's doubles could use the quirks of the people he clones, but based on Himiko's words, she can only use the quirks of the people she loves. As Ochako theorizes, the reason she didn't clone the others is because she doesn't love them, but she also realizes that in this extreme situation they're in, Toga's feelings could change at any moment, so they need to find the real Himiko Himiko as soon as possible before she has some sort of quirk evolution. Meanwhile, Himiko just hides among her Twice clones, confused, wondering why Tamura or Dabi's quirks won't work like Twice and Ochako's did, believing she loves them, yet all her attempts still failed, including her previous test before the war arc even began. Now, she assumed that when the moment comes, their powers would work in a pinch. However, the words "all heroes must die" continue to whisper and repeat through her head. And because of the confusion and the way that Ochako actually knows Toga so well, she's able to spot Alone Twice crying, recognizing that as the real Himiko, and thinking to herself how she loves seeing people happy, which is how she spotted the tears. The Twice doubles start to echo what Toga is thinking, that all heroes must die, as they increase their swarm on the battlefield. Pixie Bob uses her Earth Flow quirk to try and stop them with a massive mud and stone, but she and the other heroes are consumed by this seemingly never-ending sad man's death parade, due to Toga continuously cloning herself in a never-ending pattern. Now, while the heroes have no idea how much blood she has in stock that will allow her to keep up her transformation, they know it doesn't matter, since if they don't give it all of their efforts, the first mistake will cause the ocean of clones to wash them all away. So Ochako starts to push through all of the clones in her way, and eventually Uravity emerges from the swarm of doubles to reach the real Toga at the top. Right at this moment, elsewhere, the final moments of Dabi's story in My Hero Academia are playing out, and realizing that she can't feel the warmth of Dabi's heat anymore burning through the nearby forest, Toga wonders what happened to him and if she just lost someone else again. Just then, Ochako uses her wire to attach to Himiko's arm, using her spacewalk ability to swing herself around to reach her, as she cries out that while they haven't shared much of each other ever since the last summer where they first met, Ochako has had a big change of heart. Toga's tears keep flowing, responding once again that it's too late for any of that. But Ochako says that she knows that she's been crying and knows the reason why she can't do the things that Twice could do. She remembers back to Froppy's theory that her love didn't extend to the other villains, but after seeing Toga's tears, she realizes that it's because Toga mixed in her feelings of bloodlust, so she's not working off of pure love. Himiko is shocked hearing this, to the point where part of her face is becoming exposed, yelling to Ochako about how she doesn't know the first thing about her, as she slips away, and we see one of the Froppy clones starting to attack Froppy in the background, while Toga tells Ochako that she never wanted for anything because she followed every rule her parents gave her since she was born into a comfy life. But it was too much. She just wanted to be herself. She thinks about Curious's words to her again, as in her mind she hears Curious tell her about how she pushed her feelings down, suppressed herself, and created a mask to become someone else entirely. Just then, Ochako pulls Himiko towards her, causing Toga to barely graze Froppy, but Toga has started to transform her Twice clones into clones of the heroes too, so now there's a battle happening between Ochako's friends and clones of Ochako's friends, who are all attacking themselves, while during this, Toga once again manages to stab Ochako as she's trying to break free. This time right in her chest, as this time it's actually a pretty serious wound since Toga is right near some vital areas. But things only get worse as Toga continues to try and ignore Ochako, who begs for her to just hear her out. Froppy shouts at Toga that all this time she was taught that following the rules is what makes someone a hero, and breaking them is what makes you into a villain. But despite this, Ochako is throwing away all the rules to try and have a conversation with her, which is something that's much tougher than her killing them all or them beating her, as she begs her to listen to what she's saying, but it still isn't enough, as one final time, Toga stabs Ochako in the stomach, yelling out that they're just too different to understand each other, because Ochako and Froppy can go on about their happy, blessed lives, but she doesn't get to feel any of that, as the rules that society has made to deal with people like her may pity her, but they don't leave room for anyone to actually care about why she ended up this way. But as this happens, she thinks back to some time in the past where Twice asked her if she wants a villain name of her own, saying that she and Shiggy are the only ones in the League of Villains without one. Toga says that she doesn't want one, but ignoring that, we see a spinner suggest Vampiress Carmilla, while Twice gives his own shot at it, suggesting that Toga goes by the name of Suck Suck or Lickatongue, as Dabi calls the whole official villain name thing stupid, since it's just a custom that was never dropped before the quirk registration system was created. Shigaraki joins in, explaining more about the origins of the code names for heroes and villains, but he says that he's just fine without one, even though he thinks that they can be cool, which causes Toga to jump up in excitement at finding someone who understands her, because she thinks that the reason that she joined the League wasn't to hide her name, but to find a place where she could actually live as Himiko Toga without having to hide anything about herself from the world. We come back to the present time as, through the pain, Ochako realizes that she finally has an opportunity to have Toga one-on-one. So she starts using her zero gravity quirk to send the two of them up and away from the battlefield, as Toga screams in her face and holds a knife in Ochako's stomach down, telling her that Ochako is just trying to pity her, not understand her. And no matter what she says at the end of this, she knows that if she doesn't do what she has to do, then Ochako and the heroes are just gonna throw Toga into some prison and place her on death row for everything she's done so far or has been accused of. But she says that maybe they'll do something even worse and just end her on the spot like Hawks did to Twice back during season 6. So knowing that this is a battle for survival, Toga resolves herself to keep battling for herself and her friends as she unleashes Twice's quirk at full power and not only overpowers every villain and hero in her battlefield, but the Twice clones start to spread to a nearby city, which gets buried under their swarm as one girl's emotions begin to infect the world around her for the worse. From here, she tries to finish Ochako off using even more of Twice's doubles, but Ochako, even though she's injured, is able to use gunhead martial arts to knock them back and even uses her quirk to make them all float away, causing them to float back up into the air as Ochako explains that her quirk isn't meant to hurt people. And she knows that Toga has intentionally killed people, so maybe it's just her ego talking when she says that she can save Toga. However, she tells the girl that when she looks at her face, she wants to understand everything about her and why she became this way, and even more than that, she wants to save her from the world around her. She wants to create a world where Himiko Toga can exist, even if it's the most difficult path in front of her. But right now, seeing everything that's happened, it makes her truly sad. Toga tries to angrily yell back that she was always the sad one, but Ochako responds that they both were, as she explains that Toga really scared her at first when they met because she didn't understand Toga at all, and didn't understand how despite being a villain, she could put on such a wide, heart-filled smile like she always does when she's being herself. In that moment, as Toga tries to tell her to shut up and die, she's haunted by a vision of herself twisted into the monster that everyone sees her as she realizes that Ochako just complimented her smile after a life of everyone, even Toga's parents, telling her that they couldn't stand the sight of that creepy demon smile. Taking advantage of Toga's hesitation, Ochako says she's already pushed Toga away before, but she's seen so many smiling faces in the crowd when heroes save people that she was blown away when she saw Toga smile and actually started to feel jealous of how perfect it was. Hearing this, Toga starts to cry even more as Ochako places one of her hands on the swarm of Twice clones when suddenly the entire swarm splits open as the Twice clones and the heroes begin to float through the air, thanks to Ochako's brand new quirk awakening, which much like Shigaraki's allows her quirk to spread through everything that's touching what she initially touched. So now her zero gravity can spread through every individual Twice clone and hero that are all pressed up against each other, completely taking them out of the fight as they all float up towards the sky and have to stop battling. Finally, Ochako rushes towards Toga, telling her that she can't erase her crimes or approve of anything that she's done, but if she still feels like talking, she can have a lifetime's worth of blood, begging her to have one last chat about romance, but she's still too far away from Toga to actually reach her, and her body is starting to go cold from all the injuries she's taken and the blood loss. As she starts screaming, Ochako shouts that her parents are poor, so she became a hero to put a smile on their faces. And over time, she became an excellent hero who fell in love with Izuku Midoriya, and now only wants to stop Himiko Toga and save her before it's too late. And that's who she is and why she's here. As Ochako uses her grappling hook to attach to Toga once more and gets close to her, but Toga is still not willing to listen, slashing at Ochako a few more times while her hero begs her to tell her everything that's on her mind and all of her thoughts and feelings. In one last fit of rage over how nothing is going the way that she planned, Toga is about to crash down on Ochako with one final life-ending stab, but at that last moment, she stops and just begins to cry and cry and cry. When she speaks, she tells Ochako that she falls in love easily. Whether it's animals, villains, heroes, boys, or girls, they all have amazing blood pumping through them. She says all her life, she was told not to smile, and she gets so jealous of others who got to be happy with who they were. She says Izuku reminds her of a boy she used to like named Saito, but knew she couldn't ask him for his blood because then he'd call her a freak and not cute at all. That just like Ochako and Izuku, everyone would scold her and lecture her on the right way to be, which is why she joined the League of Villains, because then she could live and love how she needed to. Ochako, finally getting Toga to open up a bit to the point where she starts to understand her, says that the signs were always there from Toga, but it took Ochako so long to notice what she really needed was just a friend who would accept her. And hearing this, Toga begins to feel Twice's transformation start to fade off of her body, meaning that his blood has been used up and it'll be gone soon. As the heroes start to notice all the doubles disappearing around them, Ochako tells Toga she also thinks that there's something amazing about someone who's all injured and destroyed, but is still trying their hardest anyway. And she continues on to say that she knows that she can never be a replacement for the League, but she still wants Toga to know how special she thinks her smile is. Toga's black heart begins to melt away and reveal the peaceful girl lost inside the darkness once again, as Toga asks if she really is cute, and Ochako responds, the cutest girl in the world. causing Toga to smile one more time as her tears continue to fall and all the doubles fade away into the sky. However, things aren't over yet, as Ochako is barely able to feel her body at all when her and Toga reach the ground. She's lost way too much blood and starts to realize that this is it. Even though she won, she won't be able to make it back to her class or to her parents or to Deku. But hopefully, her friends will see what she did here and carry on her wishes for what should happen to Toga, since she won't be here to see it. And that's when Toga arrives in front of Ochako, realizing exactly what she needs to do, as we see Toga grabbing her blood-sucking villain gear, as at that same time she becomes Ochako using the small bit of blood that she got from the beginning of the battle to give Ochako a blood transfusion using her clone's blood, which should save Ochako's life, just like Twice was able to do to Toga during My Villain Academia. Ochako cries, pleads, fights even, telling Toga to stop, telling her that it's okay, she got what she wanted and did all of this so that Toga could live. But Toga once again repeats that no matter how good Ochako means, she knows after all of this, she'll still have to end up in prison, and life is going to be extremely hard. But now that she knows someone could understand her and truly love her, that someone could accept her, especially someone like Ochako who everyone loves including Toga, then she can be happy with giving her life and doing one good deed to make sure that person gets to continue to exist. Because no matter how sad a world without Toga might be for Ochako, a world without Ochako is just something that shouldn't be allowed to exist to Toga. So in this moment, Toga sets her machine to literally give all of her blood over to Ochako in a constant blood transfusion, hoping that someone is going to actually make it there to Ochako to seal those wounds and make sure her body doesn't get completely filled with blood. So in that moment, giving Ochako an emergency blood infusion where Toga intends to actually use pretty much all the remaining blood that is left in her body to save Ochako, leaving nothing left for herself, the two girls cry holding each other as the battle at the Okuto Aquarium on Okuto Island, Japan, draws to a close. Somewhere in her mind, as Toga is fading away off of this world, we see as a perfectly healed Himiko Toga with a smile on her face walks to the edge of a cliff and watches a small sparrow fly away into the freedom of the open sky. As Toga says, in the end, her life wasn't a mistake, and she isn't sad that she got to live it, because in the end, someone told her that she was beautiful, and she finally got to experience true love as Himiko Toga dies.